Hey, this is Ken at Capital Advantage Tutoring, and it's my job to get you past the exams. Well, today we're doing the 24. I know I did the trading market one for the 24. Now I'm going to do a little about public and private offerings. So we're going to do this for the 24, see how it goes. So there's really two types of offerings. There's public offerings, and then there's private offerings. So we're going to talk about public offerings first. This is where we're going out to the public. What are the advantages? You have access to a large pool of investors, including both retail and institutional. So both retail and institutional investors can buy. We can get a lot of capital. So the issue, we can get a lot of capital through broad investor participation, a lot of people joining in. The only problem is it costs a lot more because you have to follow the Act of 33. The Securities Act of 33 is like a script, a menu to create an issue, and you have to really follow that to go along. It also takes a while. It's time consuming. There's a lot of steps. You have to register with the SEC. You have to do a lot of filing, the underwriting. You have to disclose a lot of extensive financial and operational stuff. I mean, it's really a deep dive into that company because you're selling to the retail. And remember, the SEC's job is to protect the retail investor. So then you can also do a private placement like a Reg D, right? So Reg D under the Act of 33 is like an exemption to this. Why do people do this? Why do people do Reg D? Because there's no limit on how much money you can raise, but it's faster since you don't have to register the SEC. It doesn't cost nearly as much. It's not really as involved. I mean, you still have to give information, but it's not nearly what it takes to go through. And we'll get into that, through the hoops to get into the SEC. The only issue is that you're limited to pretty much accredited or institutional investors. Now, what's an accredited investor? An accredited investor is someone who has 1, 2, 3 accredited. 1 million net worth, 200 salary, 300 salary if they're married, or they have the Series 7 or 65. That's an accredited investor. So under Reg D, and anyone who's accredited can buy on this. So let's go into the different types of Reg D. First of all, we have Reg D, I think D for direct, Rule 504, okay? That's up to 10 million bucks, and literally anyone can buy, and there's no limit to how much it is, but the max of 10 million, but you can't advertise. That's the big thing, no advertising. 506 goes into the old, we have unlimited amount. So this 506B as in boy, you can have up to 35 non-accredited investors, provided they're sophisticated and they understand the deal, and as many accredited as you want. 506C allows as many accredited investors as you want, but no unaccredited, only accredited investors. And that one allows general ads, general solicitation. The other ones you're not. So again, make sure we got this. Reg D, private placement, Rule 504, up to 10 million. Anyone can buy, but no real advertising, but you can only raise $10 million a year. 506B, no limit, but you can have only up to 35 non-accredited who have to be sophisticated and as many accredited as you want. Usually they will need what they call a purchaser's rep to help along to explain the stuff like an accountant or a lawyer. 506C is in Charlie, unlimited money, unlimited accredited investors, 0 non-accredited, but then you can advertise. Now we can also talk about IPOs versus follow-on. So an IPO is the first time issuing common stock to the public. It's common stock. IPO is going to be common stock. It's the first time. It's a primary offering. It's the first time. A follow-on is for a company that's already trading and they're going to raise more money. So a follow-on is when they raise more money. An IPO is the first time. Don't get confused with the secondary. Once you start in the world, they can conflate them. But a secondary is when one of the shareholders wants to sell their own shares, like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Bezos or whatever. They're selling their own shares. That's not a follow-on. So again, IPO, first time issuing, primary offering. A follow-on is when they issue more shares to raise more money. That's called a follow-on or an additional offering. Don't confuse that, and that's already trading. Do not confuse that with a secondary market offering, which is when shareholders like Bill Gates, I wanted to say Brian, the guy who runs Virgin Airlines, I can't remember his name, Bezos, Musk, or they're going to sell their shares through an offering, because if they sell it through the market, they have to follow the 144 rules. This might be easier. Then we have a PIPE, okay? A PIPE is a private investment in a public entity. That's where a public company sells a block of unregistered shares to a small group of accredited or institutional investors. Now, this is probably going to dilute the shares. So what they do is they make them hold it for 6 months fully paid, okay? Once somebody buys, these accredited or institutional investors buy on the PIPE, they have to hold it for 6 months fully paid. They have to buy this. A lot of times hedge funds are going to buy this, but again, they can't sell them until the 6 months. Then they're considered registered. Now we're going to go through the process real quick, but I'm going to do a deeper dive later in the video. So first we have the pre-registration period. The issuer with his underwriters prepares the registration statement. It's usually an S1. An S1 is a registration statement we file with the SEC, and that starts the cooling off for the quiet period. No talking to the public about the deal. We can talk about our company, right? We can talk about the company, but we cannot talk about the issue. Like if I was a toy company and I went public, or say I went tutoring company like I am, and I went public during this cooling off period, I can talk about my tutoring options and all the great things I'm doing, but I can't talk about the offering. There are exceptions to that, which we'll get to, but right now the deal is during the cooling off period, no talking about the company. We file the S1 and that starts the quiet time. Okay, we file the S1, that starts the quiet period, and then we wait for 20 days. The SEC is reviewing this for the 20 days. They're going to look for a complete list, but they're not judging the merit. They're not going to approve it. They're absolutely not going to say it's good or bad or anything. Literally, if you list a company and you say you're going to lose a lot of money, as long as you disclose the shit out of it, we're good. Again, they're not making any assertion of whether you're good or not or anything. Basically, we have 82 things to check off. Did you fill out the 82 checkpoints? If you did, then we're going to declare you effective. Now, if we think there's something wrong and they need an amendment, we're going to issue a deficiency notice. A deficiency notice is literally just saying, hey, something's missing. That's from the SEC. The deficiency letter saying, hey, we're missing something. You need to fix this. Now, if that happens during the 20-day cooling off period, the actual SEC gets another 20 days to review it. If it happens after you're effective, after the 20 days, then they just give it to you right when once you fill it out, they look at it real quick and approve you. Oh, they don't say approve. They declare you effective. Usually they try to do it quick. Some bigger firms, it can be what they call accelerated filers, and they can actually request that the SEC files it and declares it effective sooner. You have to be a company. Like I wouldn't be able to do that, but a really big, like a well-known seasoned issuer could probably pull that off. Okay, during the 20-day cooling off period, they can issue it. They have a prospectus. Now, the prospectus is what's done after the statutory. You should know this if you're digging in 24. But they have a thing called red herring or preliminary prospectus. A preliminary prospectus or a red herring has like all the information about disclosures about the company, all that, but it does not have the final date of the price because it can't. We're sending this to potential investors, but it does not have an offering price. We can do this along with a tombstone during the cooling off period. So the tombstone is like a very basic ad, but it's not really an ad, that you can file during the 20-day cooling off period, specific rules that you can't have. You can't talk about the company. It's literally just, hey, this is a company. These are the shares we're issuing, and here are the underwriters. Call them if you're interested. And it actually has a thing on the side that would say, this is not an offer for sale. Both the preliminary and the tombstone will have a disclaimer saying, this is not an offer for sale. If you want to buy shares, call the underwriter. Then during this 20-day cooling off period, the syndicate, the underwriters will solicit indications of interest. They're basically recording names of potential investors, but no sales. Remember, no moans, no money, no orders, no advertising, no soliciting, none of that. Okay, you can't do any of that during the 20-day cooling off period. But we can do what they call a roadshow. A roadshow is where we go out there. It's virtual now. But we present to the potential investors. We can do in person or electronic. It is literally like we go out there and, hey, we get people in there. We try to drum up some attractiveness, but we can't sell. It's still during the 20-day cooling off period. Now they're mostly done electronically, but a lot of times they used to be done in person. And remember, an analyst for the broker-dealer cannot be in that meeting. Now we have the post-effective period. That's after the SEC declares a registration effective, usually after 20 days. And then anyone who wants to buy shares has to get what they call a final or statutory prospectus. They must get it, but basically it must be delivered before confirming the sale. And this thing actually has the final offering price, the spread, and all the proceeds, all that information about the company, any kind of disclosures and stuff like that. Boom. One quick thing about the prospectus. It needs to go in. So it needs to go in the same pristine format. So I can email it to you. I used to have to only be able to give it to you in a final form, like print form. And they had to make sure it was clear, it was wrapped paper. You couldn't touch it. You can't doggy corner, dog ear it. You can't underline, highlight. You can't refer to certain sections. It has to go pristine so the person can read it. Now, this is a massive thing that the lawyers write, and it's all about disclosures and And so you can have some forward-looking statements, but everything has to be based on facts, and you can give all the disclosures, your past historical financials. If you give that to them, it has to be in pristine format, like untouched. Now, since the last 15 years ago, they have a thing called access equals delivery. So what that means is that if you give the client or the investor access to the prospectus, that's the same as delivering it. So I can send it an email with a PDF, or you can even just send you a link to the website where you can read it. That giving them access to it is the same as delivery. You used to actually physically deliver it. Now access equals delivery. Again, I'm going to say it again because I keep repeating. It has the final offering price. It has the spread, the proceeds. All that information about it is about the company. All the disclosures and everything is going to be in that prospectus. Now that we've set the prospectus out, we can actually sell the securities. We finalize the allocation, confirm transactions, and boom, we're going to give that to them. We're going to sell the shares and allocate. I had that with Reddit, right? So I worked for a broker-dealer for the longest time, and you know that you guys taking this cannot buy common stock IPOs. It's a rule. But I shut my broker-dealer down, and about 6 months later, Reddit came out, and I go, since I'm a moderator of that toxic cesspool, great company, but whatever it is, I got directed shares. So I was allowed to buy shares in their directed offering where they sent it to me. So I went through the whole process. They said, how many do you want? I asked for 1,000. They gave me 500. I went through the whole thing. I confirmed it. They confirmed they had the money, all this stuff. And then boom, they go, look, we can only give you 500. So I bought 500 shares at 34. During this process, I got a prospectus. I got a preliminary. It was a 20-day cooling off period. I went through all this stuff. So this stuff really happens. And then I got my shares, and then I went on with my life. Now, here's a problem. Sometimes people buy these shares to flip them out right in the opening. Now, if they run up, I think I'd opened at 34. The first trade was like at 60. So if I sold it there, no one would care. We're going to get into that whole stabilizing part later. That is an issue where the underwriter will buy the shares to keep the price up. And if I were to buy my shares in the offering and then right away sell them, but not higher, the underwriter might buy them. And that's not what they want. They want us to sell the shares to long-term investors, not flippers. If we sell shares of the IPO to people to investors after the initial sale, we may have to deliver a prospectus. So this is the way it goes. It's either 90, 40, or 25. So if the IPO is over the counter, not on an exchange, then for the next 90 days, everyone needs to get a prospectus by completion of the trade. Again, if you buy the shares within the first 90 days of the IPO, if it's over the counter, you must get a prospectus by completion of the trade. If it's an additional offering over the counter, it's 40 days. Again, must get it by completion of the trade, but only for 40 days. Now, if the IPO is on a stock exchange, then it's only for 25 days. Again, if it's on the stock exchange, it's only for 25 days because they're safer. The safer you are, the less it is. And if it's a follow-on on a stock that's traded on the stock exchange, 0. So again, 90, 40, 25. 90 over-the-counter IPO, 40 over-the-counter additional, and 25 for a stock exchange IPO. Nothing for a stock exchange additional offering. So we have a couple forms we want to talk about. So the S1 is used for IPOs and initial registrations. That's where you file with the SEC. It's pretty long, and it's part of that whole registration statement, and the prospectus is in there. The S3 is a short form for bigger companies that are doing a follow-on or a secondary offering. It's a short form. It's less than the S1. We'll go deeper into it in other chapters. The S4 is for mergers, acquisitions, and other stuff. So then you have an F1 and an F3. F1 is for foreign, F is in foreign, and F3 is for foreign additional offerings. Those are the forms that we have to worry about. We're going to go deeper into them at some point. Probably not the Fs because nobody gives a shit. The other stuff. Now, blue sky laws, right? So these are laws designed for state. Just know that blue sky laws, you should probably have this already, but blue sky laws are about registering securities in the various states. Each state has their own laws, but understand, when you see the word blue sky laws, they're always talking about state registration. Okay, exempt securities and transactions. These are things that these are transactions and securities that do not have to register under the Act of 33. So start with U.S. government and agencies, munis, nonprofit, any kind of corporate debt that's under 270, right? That's exempt, okay? Any kind of U.S. banks. Now, let's talk about these other things. Intrastate offering. Okay, Rule 147 is intrastate offering. All the shares are offered inside the state to residents of that state. I always think of Ben and Jerry's. They did it in Vermont. And what happens? They did all their shares in one state. This way they didn't have to register with the SEC. And the way I remember that is Ben & Jerry's has 147 flavors. That's the way I remember it. Who knows? Chubby Hubby and 146 others. If anyone buys shares on the 147, they have to hold it fully paid for 6 months before they can sell it out of the state. They can sell it inside the state to another resident anytime they want. But if they want to sell it outside the state, they have to wait 6 months. Now you're going to see 147 versus 147A. It's not deep on this test because it's exempt. But here's the deal. The main difference between the two is 147 offers can only be made to in-state residents. 147A offers can be made outside the state, but only sales inside the state. Think of like websites and like shit like that. So people outside the state, as long as they only buy it inside the state, they're good. So 147 in-state offers only and sold in state. 147A offers outside the state, but only sells inside the state. Another one is, let's talk about crowdfunding. Okay. Under the Jobs Act, we allow crowdfunding. It allows small businesses to raise limited funds from many investors on the internet. So let's go into what it is. The crowdfunding, they have to use certain specific online portals to raise the money. They can raise up to $5 million, and both accredited and non-accredited can buy. However, again, $5 million max in a 12-month period. However, accredited can buy whatever they want. Non-accredited, they have severe limits, not testable. Accredited investors don't really have limits on what they can and can't buy. Non-accredited, just like in Reg A, we'll talk about in a second, non-accredited have limits on how much they can buy. Well, then we also have what they call a shelf offering, usually for follow-ons and secondaries, where a seasoned issuer or a well-known seasoned issuer will issue more shares under what they call an S3, which is a much faster registration timeline. So a seasoned issuer has 75 million in float, but less than 700 million, and they can file an S3. And what happens is they can do the shelf. Let me get back to that. They'll do the shelf. Now, a WKSI is one that has at least 700 million in shares float market cap or $1 billion in assets and not a lot of problems. WKSI, a well-known seasoned issuer or a seasoned issuer, but can both do a shelf offering. I'm stuttering full. So a well-known seasoned issuer can do a shelf offering. A seasoned issuer can do a shelf offering. The difference is a well-known seasoned issuer, which is big, 700 million in market cap or $1 billion in non-convertible debt, they get immediate effectiveness. Like once they file it, they're effective. Where the seasoned, which is 75 million but less than 700 million in market cap, they have to go through a review process, but it's not a 20-day review. Literally, they file it and they have to wait for a couple of days usually. It won't be quick, maybe even a day, but it's much quicker. They then have, once they file the shelf, they have 3 years to issue it. That's what this is. So they have 3 years to shoot this shit out, okay? There are a couple ways of doing it. One, they can do an at-the-market continuous offering where they just offer it over the 3 years, where they can delay it, right? They can offer a little bit, they can feed it out into the market over like the 3 years, or they can wait up to 3 years to do the offering. Either way is totally fine. That's a rule 415, 415. I don't think they'll ask the rule number, but they can. So that's a shelf. Okay, now let's go back to the other exempt transactions. We have Reg D, which you talked about. It basically allows for a private placement. It avoids full registration if you're going to sell to basically investors, most likely accredited investors. It's basically the firm, the issuer, selling directly to the investors. So we have 504, which is up to $10 million. Anyone can buy, no advertising. 506B, there's no limit. You can have as many as 35 non-accredited investors and as many accredited investors as you want. And again, an accredited investor, always think 1, 2, 3 accredited. 1 million net worth, not including house or car, 200 salary single, or 300 miserable. I mean, married. Those 3 things. Or you have the Series 7 or the 65 or the 82, or you're a partner, officer, director of the issuing company. All of those are considered accredited. There's no dollar limit on those, and as many as them can buy. Only up to 35 non-accredited for the Reg D 506B. And neither for 504 nor 506B can you do general ads. 506C allows 0 unaccredited, and you can do ad general solicitation, general advertising, because the idea is that even if you advertise and grandma and grandpa who aren't accredited want to buy, they can't. So do ads all you want. Now, if you buy on a Reg D, you have to hold it fully paid for 6 months. You cannot sell it during that 6 months. That's that. just to add it in here, it's not really part of this, but we're going to add in. If you're a control person of any security, Richard Branson, I got his name, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, if you're a control person, PODS, partner, officer, director, and big ass shareholder, 10% owner, okay? PODS, partner, officer, director, or big ass shareholder, you have to follow 144 also, not even for the holding period, but you have to follow 144 rules, which means you can sell the shares anytime you want if it's registered, but you have to follow the 144 rules, which means every 90 days, we're going to do it here, you can sell the greater of 1% of the outstanding or the 4 weeks trading volume 4 times a year, which is every 90 days. That's a control person. That doesn't really apply to Reg D in this case, but it can. But I just throw it out there because it's a 144 rule. Now, where I will tie it in is if you're a control person of a Reg D, then you have the 6-month hold, and then you have to follow the 144. So the 3 types of people. If you're a regular investor, accredited or non-accredited investor of a Reg D, you must hold it for 6 months fully paid, then sell what you want. If you're a control person of any public company, you don't have a holding period, but you have to follow the 144 rules forever, the volume restrictions. If you're a control person of a restricted Reg D, you have to follow the 6 months and then follow the 144 rules of volume restrictions. The exception to 144, okay? So if you are not controlled, this is only for the 144 6-month hold. The exception to this is 144A, because there's always a goddamn exception. 144A allows you to sell to QIBs. Sounds like a funny word, but it's qualified institutional buyers. These are big financial institutions that are 100 million or more, or broker dealers with 10 million or more. The idea is that they're sophisticated, they can defend themselves. So the whole point is they can buy during this 6-month hold if under 144A transactions. Literally, QIBs can buy almost anything because they don't need FINRA and SEC protection. So they're big enough, they go, we don't want your protection, so let us do our shit. That's what QIBs do. You can sell under 144A. Now, Reg S, outside the country. Reg S is you're selling to non-U.S. persons. So it can be a U.S. citizen, but they have to be a non-resident, okay? Now, you can sell it outside the country, and then you can't sell it back in the U.S. for a certain amount of time, depending whether it's a year or 40 days. You can look that up. Now, Reg A, okay? There's Reg A we have to talk about. Reg A is a small issuer exemption. It's really Reg A plus now, okay? Reg A plus is 2 things. What it is, right? And again, this is not heavy on the test, but it could show up. Reg A plus, there's tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is you raise up to $20 million every year, and tier 2 is up to $75 million every year. So tier 1, anyone can buy, there's no problem, but you can't raise more than $20 million. Now, Reg A plus tier 2, hard to say. Reg A plus tier 2 is up to $75 million, and anyone can buy, but non-accredited can only buy a certain percentage, like 10% of their net worth or their income. They are limited on that. The thing about tier 2 is that they do have to make financial reports that the AA plus tier 1 doesn't have to do. Again, not going to be crazy deep on that. Just know that that's an exemption to the Act of 33. So even though we go through a private placement avoiding the Act of 33, we do have certain responsibilities to the investor. We have to give them enough information, a disclosure doc, usually called a private placement memorandum, to give them enough information to make a recommendation, to make a decision, I guess, right? So usually when you do this, first there's an engagement letter between the issuer and the investment bank signing it. Then there's going to be a teaser. Remember, the PPM is a disclosure doc, which may or may not be filled out. So the teaser will be like a summary of the private placement memorandum, and that's sent to investors when they're first getting involved. These are high level. Don't sweat it down. Then we have a term sheet, which is basically for private placements again. Which is just lists like all the terms, the voting rights, all the stuff that you're going to get as an owner of it, whether there's a liquidation preference, stuff like that. Then we have a confidentiality, I can't fucking say that, confidentiality agreement. Before we receive the PPM, we're going to have to sign a form saying that we're going to keep this quiet. It's like an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Then we will sign the subscription agreement and get in on it, and then we'll get allocated. So let's make sure we got this. You're interested, you get the teaser. That gives you high-level stuff. You get the term sheet. Then you sign the confidentiality agreement. I said it right this time. Then you're going to get the PPM. Then if you like it, you sign the subscription agreement, and you pay, and you get the shares, and you're in it. Then you have to hold it for 6 months fully paid. As an investor, if you're not accredited or they don't think you're sophisticated enough, you may get a purchaser's rep that is usually someone not involved in the deal, a lawyer or an accountant who's going to help explain the deals to you. Now, the last thing I'm going to cover in this is called a Rule 145. It's when they reclassify. When they reclassify the shares of the company. So if we do a merger, consolidation, or transfer assets from one company to another, that would be a 145. Okay. Merger, consolidation, changing it like substitution of one security for another, transfer them to another company, or a merger or consolidation. Stock splits, reverse splits, and par value are not considered under 145. So again, 145 is kind of when you reclassify your shit. So it's going to be you're changing one security for another, a merger consolidation, or when you transfer assets from one corporation to another. And that's usually going to be an S4. Okay, now let's talk about the actual new issue marketplace. I've done the public and private. And again, I'm reminding you, this is purely a supplement to explain some stuff. This is not a replacement for reading the book. Hear this? It is not a replacement for reading the book. See, I can't speak. Why the fuck would you listen to me? Okay, let's talk about this. So when we're going to raise capital, we've already talked about it a little bit. There's an IPO and then a follow-on, okay? An IPO is the company offers shares to the public for the first time. I've said this already. It can't be stuck in your head anymore. A follow-on is subsequent when it's after the IPO. It's issuing more shares and more shares and more shares, and that dilutes people. That's where the rights offering comes in. If you remember from the Series 7, follow-on additional offerings, you're issuing more shares. We do a preemptive rights or a rights offering to let all the old shareholders actually get to keep their percentage ownership. Now, what's primary versus secondary? Primary is when new shares are created and the issuer receives the money. Again, primary is when new shares are created and the issuer receives the money. Even if it's a IPO, second, third, fourth, fifth offering, it's still a primary. A secondary offering is existing shares sold by the current shareholders, officers, early investors, and their proceeds go to the sellers, not the company. They go to the shareholders. So this happens a lot where you see an offering. Now, in the real world, they'll combine, conflate in terms, follow-on and secondary. They are different for this test. Once you pass, nobody gives a shit. So again, a primary offering is the company gets the money. A secondary means like some of the shareholders who are selling their shares gets the money. What's a split or combined? A split sale is when they combine them both. So let's say Microsoft is going to issue a new issue of shares. Not they're going to. I'm not saying that. And Bill Gates, because you know what? I could use to buy another $50 million house. I'm going to issue some shares along with it, his shares. That would be a split offering. It's both primary and secondary together. Again, you still need disclosure when that happens, and you still need a prospectus for all of those shares. Okay, underwriting. What does an investment banker do? They advise the issuer on raising capital, often through public offerings. Boom. Okay. The letter of intent. It's the initial step in underwriting, specifying the amount to be raised and the underwriter's compensation. The letter of intent is a non-binding and is signed before the filing of the registration statement, that S1 we talked about earlier. Underwriting, that's an underwriting syndicate that's formed by the lead investment banker and to distribute the securities. It's a bunch of broker-dealers who get together and then they sell the shares and they actually form a syndicate and they're going to distribute the securities after it's effective, but they're going to help gather a book of business and try to sell it. The syndicate agreement defines the rights and obligations of the syndicate members who shares and the liabilities, Eastern, Western, all that stuff. And hopefully we'll get to that. I don't know if my mind can handle that. So the syndicate agreement is agreement among all the underwriters to decide who gets what percentage, what we're going to do with the terms, all that stuff. Now let's talk about the different types of underwriting commitments. We have a firm commitment. That is the firm commitment. The underwriter, a firm commitment underwriting is where the syndicate buys the entire issue and then sells it at its own risk. So that's a principal transaction. If any shares remain unsold, the syndicate members absorb the unsold shares. So again, here's my example. Company wants to raise $10 million. If $8 million is sold, the syndicate absorbs the remaining $2 million by buying them and then hopefully selling them at a later date. So firm commitment, the issuer is guaranteed to sell their shares or bonds or whatever it is. Best efforts. We agree to sell as much as we can, but we're not required to buy unsold shares. We act as an agent for the issuer rather than committing my own capital. And I try to sell $1 million. If I sell 400,000, you take it. Unless there's some contingency on it, which we'll talk about. You sell the 400 and I sell the 400 to the public and I return the 600,000 to you. So best efforts is I'm going to do the best I can, but no guarantee of anything. All or none. That means the issuer said, I either sell all of it or none of it. So if the issuer calls me and says, I want to sell 1 million shares and I sell 800, they cancel the deal. Again, we're acting as an agent. We're not taking on responsibility. If they're unsold, that means all the money is returned back to the investors. Now, okay, so we have a contingent offering, all or none and mini max. Okay, so an all or none requires that the entire issue be sold or we cancel it and everyone gets their money back. Any unsold shares means we didn't do it and the entire offering fails, even if we're off by like 100,000 shares. There's ways around that, but whatever. And what happens is any kind of contingent offering like this or a mini max, the investor's money will go into an escrow account and sit there until the deal is a go. Then the money will be released because they don't trust us broker dealers. And mini max is like we have a maximum, like say we want to do 1 million, but we're willing to accept 600,000. So I would love to sell the 1 million, but if you get 600 grand in, we'll let the deal go. So again, all or none means if you're anything below what we want, cancel the deal. Mini max is saying, hey, I want 1 million, but if you get close up to a certain number, once you hit that number, we're good. So that money, until we hit the contingent number, that money that investors pay goes into an escrow account and we cannot touch it. Okay. Another one is called the standby agreement. That's with preemptive rights. Okay. Preemptive rights is basically happens when I issue more shares as a company. All the current shareholders are given these rights that are very short term, up to 30 days, that let them keep their percentage ownership. They get to buy it at a discount. They get priority, like right of first refusal. They don't have to. They don't have to do it. They can let it expire. They can give it as a gift. They can sell them. They can exercise them. Any unsubscribed shares, the syndicate in a standby agreement will buy the shares on a firm commitment. If I'm going to do a standby agreement, I'm guaranteed to sell my shares. So I offer it to all the existing shareholders. If they don't buy it, if they don't exercise their rights, then the underwriter, the standby underwriter, will buy all the shares from me and then sell them to the public. Reg M, I'll put the video here. You can watch it, or I'll just tap it in here. But I'm going to talk about Reg M right now. Okay, so Reg M is all about manipulation. And this could be on the 24 or the 57, both of them, but also could be very briefly mentioned as an overarching thing on the 7. So I'm not going to say it's going to be on there. You don't have to worry about it if you're taking the 7. But if you're taking the 24 or the Series 57, which is the equity trader thing, you probably need to know this stuff. So understand that Reg M, always think M for manipulation. I always think, who knows if that's what they did, but that's what I think. It's the way I remember, Reg M for manipulation. This is to prevent manipulation on offerings, not IPOs, because an IPO doesn't actually trade before that other than the gray market, but that's a whole different story. So Reg M is preventing manipulation of additional offerings or secondaries. So the second, third, fourth, fifth time it offered, or for secondaries, it prevents people involved in the deal, underwriters, issuers, affiliates, agents, all that stuff, from buying shares during a certain restricted period, which we'll get to, prior to the deal. Because what would happen? Say I'm going to offer I'm going to issue the shares on Thursday at the closing price on Thursday. Well, the days before, the underwriters, the issuers, all the agents go, hey, let's push the stock up so they'll make more money. That would be great. What's wrong with that? So they would start buying it and they would push the price up. And so they go, SEC goes, wait, let's not. So in the mid 90s, they put this in. I think it was the 90s. Late 90s. They put this in and said, okay, from now on, if you're going to be involved in the deal, you can't be involved in buying shares. You can sell unsolicited works, but you can't buy, bid, purchase, or induce others to purchase if you're involved in the deal. Again, you can't buy, bid, induce others to purchase, okay? Buy, bid, purchase, or induce others to purchase the shares of the deal, or what they call a reference security. So the subject security is the one being offered. A reference security is something that the subject can turn into, like a convertible. So if you're issuing a new convertible, okay, this common stock could be the reference. You can't buy either one of those. Now, there are exceptions that, like if you issue a regular bond and then you issue another bond like a week later, they're considered different. Reg M doesn't apply with certain exceptions. Don't worry about it. So if anything's different, the maturity date even is different by a day, it's a different issue. But for the most part, they get rid of it. For investment grade bonds, they'll say, and they're changing the rules, but for the investment grade bonds, they always say it's not really part of it. So we're really talking about equity for the most part, because literally bonds don't move, so nobody cares. Okay, so let's go back into this. So if you're part of the deal, issuer, underwriter, affiliate, agent, whatever it is, any kind of dealer, involved in this deal of the distribution, you cannot buy, bid, purchase, or induce others to purchase during a certain amount of time. So the amount of days that you have to not do this, not buy, bid, purchase, or induce others to purchase, depends on how big the company is, right? So if it's a small one, less than $100,000, remember, $100,000 of average daily trading volume, that's not a lot. I mean, that's really tiny. Or less than under 25 million in public float, then you have to wait a full 5 days. So that means 5 days before the pricing. So if you do it on Thursday, it's 5 days before that. Okay. So then you can't buy, bid, purchase, or induce others to purchase. I'm going to say that a million times because that's literally Reg D. Now, if it's above that, then you have 1 day, right? So then it's only the day before. So if it's pricing Thursday, it's only Wednesday you can't do it. So again, if it's 100 grand, if it's 100 grand or more, all the way up to a million, or 25 million float up to 150 million, then it's 1 day. And then the exception is the active, which means if it's over a million and over a million ADTV and a public float of 150 million or more, then it's a 0 day. But they still leave it here because you still can't manipulate it. If you find some way to manipulate it, then you're in trouble under Reg M. Okay. So again, this is the restricted periods. When they say public float, they mean shares owned by non-affiliates, people who are not associated with the firm. So that's the public float, not the insiders. So if you have a company that has 200 million, but 100 million of it is held by insiders, then it's going to be 100 million. So it'll be the 1 day. So again, if you're involved in the deal, your restricted period is if it's a small company, very, very small, it's 5 days. Then it's 1 day if you're medium size. And then if you're a bigger company, the active, they call it an exception, it's 0 days. Like there's no day restriction. You can buy, you can bid, buy, induce others to bid, do anything you want from day one and on. It doesn't matter because there's no restriction. And again, these are big companies. I mean, good luck trying to manipulate Microsoft or IBM or Apple or Tesla. You can't do it. Citicorp, I mean, it was trading at one point about 10 years ago. It was trading over 1 billion shares a day. There'd be a lot of shares for you to have to push to manipulate it. So again, this is trying to prevent people from involved in the deal from pushing the stock up by buying it to get a higher price on the deal. Now, remember, that's talking about buying the subject security, the one part of the offering, or a reference, which the subject security can turn into. Okay. That's what we're covered. Both of them together are called covered securities. So let's get into 101. Okay. So 101, Reg M 101 is about underwriters or people involved in the deal that are not market makers or not part of the issuer. So a market maker is not going to be part of this. It's going to be 103. We'll get to it. So an issuer is not part of this either. So the underwriter who is not an issuer or a market maker, 101 applies to them. So they cannot buy, bid, purchase, or induce others to bid the stock. So under Reg 101, some of the exceptions are, so they can't buy, bid, purchase, or get others to bid or purchase because they don't want to manipulate. We know that. So there are exceptions. If it's inactively traded, we know there's nothing there. Odd lots, anything under 100 shares. If you're exercising an option or a warrant, that's fine. Unsolicited is almost always okay with everything. Unsolicited, okay? And then basically, if you're doing transactions as part of a basket, okay? So the whole point is that if you're doing a basket of securities, like it's a program, as long as it's not more than 5%, you're okay. I think that's a little too deep for this. But again, the big ones are, if it's odd lots or unsolicited or exercise of options or warrants, those are exceptions that you might see that, oh, can they do that? Yes, under those circumstances. So that's 101. So 101 is, again, for underwriters who are not part of the deal. 102 is for issuers and selling shareholders. Now, I'm going to say a name and stuff that isn't really applicable because it's inactive, but like Microsoft selling shares, Bill Gates will be a selling shareholder, right? So if they did a secondary or even a combined or a split offering where they're both the company and the selling shareholder doing it, they can't buy, bid, or purchase. Now, again, with Microsoft, they can because it's fucking active. But if it was a smaller company, which you would never heard of, then if it's a company issuing shares and then any of the partners, officers, directors selling their shares too, they are prohibited from buying, bidding, purchasing, or inducing others to bid. So again, 102 is to prevent from issuers and selling shareholders from buying, bidding, purchasing, or inducing others to bid during that restricted period. A lot of the exceptions that were for 101 are not available for 102. Unsolicited is not a thing. Actively traded is not a thing. And de minimis is not. Nor are the basket securities. Those are not exceptions for them. So 102 literally cannot buy, bid, or purchase and induce others to bid or purchase. I keep saying that. I wonder why, to make sure it's stuck in your head during that restricted period. They don't really have a lot of exceptions. Okay, so here's the most misunderstood one. 103 is for underwriters who are market makers, right? Because think about this. So if you're a market maker, you have to be bidding and offering. We'll do videos on that. You have to be bidding and offering all day long from 9:30 to 4. That's your job, okay? But if you're part of an underwriting, all of a sudden, wait, Reg M says you can't, so then you can't do your job. So you're going to just sit and twiddle your thumbs all day long? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you do. I mean, act like Jeffrey Toobin? I have no idea. So now, hope you caught that. So they allow for what they call passive market making. So you're like a market maker, you're not really pushing the stock. Selling, nobody cares, because push it down, that hurts you. So it's preventing you from manipulating the market by limiting how much you can buy and what you can buy. So here are the rules for passive market making under 103. And again, it's letting you be a market maker even during the restricted period. So here's what they do. They limit your net purchases on the day each day. So they're going to say you can buy up to 30% of your average daily trading volume. Usually average daily trading volume is like the past 2 months or 60 days previous, whatever it is. They're not testable. But they're going to limit how much you can buy during the day. And they're going to limit it to 30% of your average daily trading volume. If you're a market maker and you do 100,000 shares a day, then you can only do 30,000 now, but never less than 200, which is like what? Okay. 200 seems to be like 2 times the minimum bid size. So they're saying, even if you only net average daily traded 300 shares a day, you could do at least 200. Okay. So it's never less than 2, but it's a max of 30% of your average daily trading volume on any given day. And if you go over that, you just do what they call an excused withdrawal. You step away, you say, listen, I have a reason for not making a market for the rest of the day. And that's okay, because the SEC goes, yeah, well, we have to limit them. So that's what they call an excused withdrawal. We'll get to that more when we get into more market making. Remember, it's net purchases, not just trading. It's net purchases. So usually that means if you're buying, that means your customer is selling. But I want to add this feature into it. So now let's say your limit's 30 grand. Boom. Your limit is 30 grand and you're at like 29.5. Okay. You're at 29.5. You can only buy another 500 shares. Now remember something. They do add this, that if you go over the limit and then you get back, say you go over your 29.5 and you buy 1,000 shares. If you go over that and then you get back under it within 30 seconds, I think the number, you can stay. Okay. You don't have to pull your quotes. As long as you're under your number, you're fine. But here's what happens. Wait, you say, wait a second, how could you buy more? So this is the example. So if you're at 29.5 and a seller for 1,000 shares comes in, well, you can buy the entire 1,000. That would put you over the limit, right? That will put you at 30,500, which would violate the limit, but they allow it on a single purchase. So you can't you can't aggregate a bunch and go over. If you have a bunch of orders that come in, you can only take one that if it's going to put you over the limit, you can only execute one of them. And then you pretty much have to pull your quotes and do an excused withdrawal for the rest of the day. Unless, of course, you get back under during a bona fide market making activity. Again, I doubt that's testable, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But again, if you're a market maker and you're right almost at your limit and a sell order comes in and you get to buy that, if it puts you over the limit, that's fine. If it's a one-time thing, one single order, and then you pull your quotes. They also limit what price you can do. They're saying passive, so you can't be leading the pack, right? So you can't sit there and bid higher than everyone else. You can only bid where other independent market makers, you can only bid where other independent market makers are bidding. So if, say the market is 42 by 45, okay? 42 bid by 45 offer. You can bid 42 because there's other market makers there. As long as they're not members, they're not also passive market makers. So if they're part of your syndicate and they're bidding 40, well, then you can't do it. So if there's no independent market makers, you can't make a bid. There has to be at least one independent market maker buying at that price. So if you see them bid 40, you can bid 40. Here's the thing. Unlike stabilizing where you could stay, if they drop their bid to $39.98, you're allowed to buy what they call 2 times the trading limit, the minimum bid size. It's really 200 shares. You can buy 200 shares at that price, and then you have to drop. So let me say that again. If an independent bidder, independent market maker is bidding 40, I, as a passive market maker, the PSMM, have to bid. I don't have to do anything, but I can bid 40 also. And that's good. I'll be with them for as much as I want. If they drop their bid and there's no more independent market makers at that bid, I can buy 200 shares and then I have to drop to the next, wherever the best independent bid is. I have to do that. Those are the rules. So I maxed out at 30% of my ADTV, and then I can't bid higher than anyone else. If they drop, I have to drop also. I don't get to stay there because I was there first. You have to drop. Now remember, all of this goes out the window with an unsolicited, right? So if you're a market maker and you receive a customer limit order, you have to display it. You absolutely have to display a limit order. So if the independent market maker is bidding 40 and you're bidding 40 and you got a limit order to buy at 40.10, you got to show it. You have to do it because you're not doing it. You didn't induce it. It has to be unsolicited, and you have to show a customer limit order. You have to display it. Those are rules that apply. Also, for the 24, more than this, if you're going to be a passive market maker, you have to notify NASDAQ at least one business day before you do it. You have to do that. You have to let them know you're there. Pretty much anytime you do any kind of bid like that, you have to let NASDAQ know that there's something going on. So again, you can bid over the independent bid only if it's a customer limit order, and it's got to be unsolicited. You can't have said, hey, John, go bid 41 for me. You can't do that. It has to be unsolicited. Let me add one more thing into this. Passive market making really only can be done during a firm commitment offering. So a firm commitment offering is when the underwriter is guaranteeing the sale of the issue. That's the only time. You can't do it during an at-the-market offering because that's weird. Because an at-the-market offering is where we sell it during the day at the prices, and you bidding would kind of hold it up, and that'd be more manipulation. That is not okay. Okay, now on to 104, baby. 104, stabilizing bid. So stabilizing bids are literally legal manipulation. Okay. So you're the underwriter, and it can only be one person doing it at a time. Only one bid, only one underwriter can be doing this. What you're doing is you're holding the price. So let's say we bring the shares out at 20. You're allowed to buy it at 20 or lower, as long as there's another bidder there first. Remember, you can't start a stabilizing bid unless there's actually another bid already there. So you're stabilizing, you're holding the price there. You can buy as many shares as you want, but you have to notify NASDAQ the day before. You have to make sure that everyone knows it there. There could be penalty bids, which I think we can talk about another time, or I'll do it today. I'm not sure. So stabilizing bid is where you're bidding at a price to keep the price from dropping, at least for a while. They allow this, but they have rules on that. You can only bid where other people are bidding. Again, stabilizing not during at the market where they're selling it all during the day, because that would be unfair. It would be pure manipulation. You can bid at the highest bid or the last sale. Okay, so that's the big thing. You can bid at the last sale or the highest bid, whichever is higher. That's different than the other one where you can only bid where the other people are bidding. So stabilizing allows you to bid the higher of the last sale, last transaction price, or the highest independent bid. One thing I'm going to add, it can never be higher than the offering price. You cannot go higher than the offering price ever. And you can't push it up. You can't bid and then bid higher than that. So basically, if the bid is 40 and it's trading at 40.01, you can bid 40.01. If it's trading at 40.02, you can bid 40.02. But if the offering price is at 40.50, 40.50 is as high as you're allowed to do. You cannot go higher than that. And there's no limit on how many shares you can buy, but you can't bid higher than the last independent bid or the last sale, whichever is higher. The syndicate bid or the stabilizing bid has to be announced that it's a stabilizing bid and you're buying stuff. Now let's talk about the penalty bid for a little bit. That's really, people don't understand it. So a penalty bid is when, what's the best way to do it? When I'm selling, I'm the lead underwriter, I'm distributing it, and you guys are Morgan Stanley or whatever firm you are, and you're selling to people who flip, okay? Flipping is when they get into it and then they sell it right away. Like back in the early 90s, we wanted the Yahoo deal or all these other deals. I was at the hedge fund. People would come in and say, hey, can you buy some of these offerings? We knew they were dog shit deals, but we knew that they were getting these better deals later, and we wanted to be on the goods with them, right? So what would happen, good, whatever you want to call it, not on the outs. They like us, okay? So we would take their shit deals, knowing that we're just trying to get out quick, and we'd sell it right on the opening or really close because we want to lose as little money as possible because they're bad deals, okay? But the more we buy of their bad deals, makes him look better, and then he would give us a better allocation on the good deal, like the Visa, the Yahoo, Tesla, all that shit. So now, the problem is, here's what they do. I'm the lead underwriter now. I'm buying these shares, stabilizing. I notice that all of the shares I'm buying are literally from your customers. So wait a second. That's not okay. That's too much. So I'm going to set up a penalty bid. And what happens is I say every share that comes from your customers, I'm going to take it out of your profit. Because remember, you bought shares. When you do an offering, you're going to buy shares at like 19.
from the issuer or from the lead underwriter and sell them at 20 and you'll make $1. So what happens is I start using your money to buy these shares. So it comes out of your profits. So that's a penalty bid, is to prevent the syndicate members from selling to just flippers, people who just sell on the opening. We're trying to get people to invest. So we want you to only sell to investors so they hold it forever and they don't sell back to me and I lose money. That's literally why I don't want that happening. Okay. So again, the stabilizing bid is there to hold the stock at a price to prevent it from dropping. Legal manipulation. The penalty bid is side by side with that. It has to be announced, has to be known. I have to notify everyone ahead of time that I'm actually punishing one of the underwriters by taking profits out of their pockets. So I go, every share that I buy, I'm taking it out of your profits from when you did the deal. That would normally stop you from doing stuff like that. The last one is important because the SEC has been really coming down. I was at a firm. We got swept up. One of my guys got nailed for this. So stupid. We paid like a $20,000 fine. Everyone paid like $500,000-$600,000 $1 million fines. So I guess we did better. I don't know. I had 400 traders. Somebody was going to do some shit. So here's what happens. When they announce a secondary, say they announce a secondary that's going to be priced on Thursday, the price will drop. It just does because it's diluting the shares, and everyone does this. As soon as they see it's going down, they start shorting the shares because they know it's going to drop, so they make money. So you can short it anytime you can do whatever you want. You can sell it short, but then you can't short it and get shares on the allocation. So you can't short it on Monday and then expect to get shares on Thursday through the allocation from the underwriter. So if you want to short shares and buy them on your own, don't care. But if you sell them short, because that's manipulating down, they don't want you pushing it down and then getting shares. There's a way that works. Let's say the stock's trading at 20 and you start shorting it 19, 18, 17, 15, 14, really down. Your average short is like 18. And then because the stock's trading at 14, we're going to go public at 14. You could buy the shares at 14 when you shorted them 18 and make $4, literally just for being an asshole. So they prevent that. They say, if you're going to short shares, if you shorted shares beyond more than 5 days before the offering, then you can buy shares. So this is the one, you know how we did the 0, 1, and 5 days? Well, on this, it's always 5 days. So 5 days before the offering, you cannot sell the shares short and get the shares in the deal. That is just a deal breaker, okay? That's a violation. That's a Reg M 105 violation, and the SEC was really cracking down on it. There is an exception. There's a way out of this. If you short the shares on Monday and the offering's on Thursday, you're within the 5 days, you can't get shares unless you buy it back the day before the pricing. So if the pricing Thursday, if you buy it back Wednesday, then you can get shares. So if you cover your short and you're 100% flat, you're not short a single share, then you can get shares on the offering. So my guy, idiot, he did whatever happened. He shorted the shares on like 200 shares on Monday morning. And then at noon, they called him and said, hey, we're doing an offering this afternoon. You want some? And he forgot that he shorted and bought it back. He goes, sure, I'll get 1,000 shares. Bang, nailed it, because he was short within the 5 days prior to the pricing. So he got jailed. We caught it. Literally, we caught it. We fired him the next day. And still 2 months later, we had to pay a fine. Just the way it is. You know what it is. You're supposed to stop it. No way to stop it because the guy's an idiot. But again, so you cannot short the shares within the 5 day period before the offering and actually get the shares in the offering. If you want to buy in the market, totally cool. That's Reg M for the Series 24 and the Series 57 and high level for the 7, most likely not in there. They may just mention it in passing. So hopefully that should help. Usually you won't have to go deeper than that, but I hope I helped a little bit. Let me know if I did. And don't forget to check me out every Tuesday and Thursday night, 8:30 p.m. on YouTube. Have a great night. I will talk to you later.
You're going to read about the Corporate Finance Committee. I don't know how deep it's going to go, but we're going to talk about it. If you are doing an issue, unless it's exempt, you have to file certain disclosure documents with the Corporate Finance Committee to make sure that you're not ripping people off. If it's a registered security, you must file the documents within 3 days of filing the registration. For exempt, it's with FINRA 15 days before the offering. So again, the disclosure docs within 3 days. For registered, for exempt, it's 15 days before. Now, this is all the registration statements, the syndicate agreements, letters of intent, escrow agreements, and all your expense estimates. I don't think they're going to get into what's an expense versus what isn't an expense, but we'll cover it. And if you don't need it, you don't need it. Now, the exception, who doesn't have to do this? I like that one better. Let's talk about who doesn't have to do this first. Okay. So all the information has to be filed, but let's see who doesn't have to do it. If it's a It's anything with unsecured debt that has a triple B or higher. It's anything that's registered with an S3, like a WKSI or a seasoned issuer. Anything that's on an exchange or charitable nonprofit, shit like that. That's SEC exempt, okay? Reg D is exempt. Mutual funds are exempt. Variables, munis, tender offers, and anything registered with the SEC and issued as a result of a merger or acquisition, those do not have to be filed. They're going to be looking at the fairness of your compensation. Are you getting too much money? The offering proceeds, how much risk you're taking by doing this, and they're looking at the type of securities. All these things come into play. They're going to look at what is compensation. There's a list on all these books with it, but I'm going to go over it and I'm going to talk about it anyway. Okay, it's easier to just list what you're going to get in trouble for doing. One, if they reimburse you for salaries of investment banking personnel. If they give you commissions paid before the sale to the public, that makes sense. If you get securities or warrants or options that are more than 5 years and are more favorable than the public gets. The other big one is if you get what they call free stock. Free stock, that means you're getting stock, you're getting paid in stock that you don't have to hold for at least 6 months. You have to hold it. It has to be restricted for at least 6 months, and then it's okay. So let's say a member firm, which is a FINRA firm, decides to go public with themselves, or they're under control of a member firm. There's some conflicts. So they have to decide if they're going to issue their own shares. If they do, FINRA might require them to have what they call a qualified independent underwriter. It's basically it's another broker-dealer underwriter who's been a manager, co-manager in a deal of at least 3 public offerings and other things which you don't have to worry about. But they're going to make sure that they are going to do the due diligence on the transaction. Because look, if I'm doing a deal, I'm going to do very favorable terms, right? I'm going to be actually very I will probably not be able to look at myself in the mirror and go, oh, Ken, you're fat. No, I think I'm thin. I think I'm still 160 pounds. I'm delusional. So what happens is if we are an underwriting our own shares, they will usually require a qualified independent underwriter to do the due diligence on the deal to make sure that we're not ripping anyone off and we're pricing it the right way and we're not trying to rip anyone off. Also, if we are going to do our own deal where we control or have a conflict of interest, and we're going to put it in an account of someone as a discretionary account, this is a known one, you have to get permission, written permission from the customer before you do it, okay? So again, I'm issuing my own shares, or I'm trying to get one of my customers who I have discretion to buy shares of my IPO that I'm doing or I am that's doing for me. I have to get written permission from that customer before doing that transaction. If you have a conflict and you're issuing your own shares or there's a control relationship with the person issuing the shares, there's 2 situations where you need permission. Well, sort of position. If you have discretion over the account and you think it's suitable for them to buy shares of this company, you have to get written permission from them. And so they know that it's a control relationship, that there may be a conflict of interest of you telling them to buy those shares. That's one. If it's a non-discretionary account, and they want to do it on their own, that's fine, as long as you disclose to them in writing that there is a control relationship. As long as they're fully aware, then you can sell them the shares. When we're allocating shares, we want to make sure there's no quid pro quo, like undue excessive compensation. So I can't allocate an excessive amount of shares to a person to get their investment banking business. That's called spinning, and that's kickbacks, right? So basically I'm saying, oh, give me business and then I'll give you extra shares. We can't do that. That seems wrong. So spinning is when they specifically allocate shares to a certain corporate person to get their investment banking business at a later date. That's spinning. That's a violation. That is not allowed at all. It includes the officers, directors, former, current, prospective customers, any of that stuff. If you're using these shares to get business, that's called spinning. So flipping isn't actually a violation. So what we're doing is when we allocate shares to people, we are supposed to allocate them to people who will invest and hold on to it. However, not everyone does that. They flip on the opening. Now, if they sell shares when it's up, nobody really gives a shit. But if it's at like the IPO price or lower, then if there's a stabilizing bid, the underwriter is going to have to buy that. So there is a prohibition that the FINRA firms can't take back commissions for doing that if you flip on the opening. They can't do that. However, the only exception to that is if, and it's not really coming from the customer, if the syndicate member is doing a syndicate bid and enacts a penalty bid. A penalty bid is I'm stabilizing, I'm buying shares. You should have watched in the Reg M. It's sort of what it is. If I'm stabilizing and I'm leading it, and I realize your firm is selling, a lot of your people are selling to me on the opening, I can enact a penalty bid where it's going to come out of your commissions. So you're the firm, you're going to end up paying for some of these shares, so because I don't have to. That's a penalty bid. We enact that to make you not to do that, so that as a firm, you're going to try to sell to people who won't flip on the opening and will hold it for a longer term. So again, flipping is not a violation. It's frowned upon. We don't like it. And if we enact a penalty bid, the lead underwriter can penalize the offending broker-dealer for selling to people who do that. So as an underwriter, okay, if you're a member firm, you cannot accept a market order prior to start trading. Understand, because the problem is they place a market order, they don't get it, they may end up buying it at a price much higher than when it's trading. You can accept market orders after it starts trading, but not before the first trade happens. Now, I've talked about it before. Stabilization is when the lead underwriter can buy shares at the IPO or lower. It's in the Reg M. I should have just covered it. At the IPO price or lower to hold the price. Now, there are rules. Only one person can do it. It's usually going to be the lead underwriter. It has to be in the prospectus. And if they do a penalty bid, that has to be in the prospectus also. They cannot push it up. So they can buy at the IPO price or lower. They can buy at the IPO price or lower, but they cannot buy higher than the last sale or the last independent bid. So if the IPO price is 20 and someone's bidding 19, they can bid 19. If it's trading at 1901, they can bid 1901. They can't push it up on their own. It has to go on its own. If it's trading at 20, then they can bid 20 and they can hold it there all day long buying shares. They're holding the price to stop it from dropping. Now, if they, like as I said before, if there's a bunch of people flipping it, they can enact a penalty bid where they start punishing the broker-dealers that sold to those people by taking their commissions away for every share they buy. It comes out of the other underwriters' profits. Okay, now the new issue rule, the no IPO for you. If you work for a broker-dealer, you cannot buy on common stock IPOs. You can do secondaries, you can do private placements, you can do debt, you can do mutual funds, you can do exempt securities, you can do DPPs, rights, ADRs. You can just not buy fully registered common stock IPOs. That's it. You cannot buy on them. Once they start trading, have at it. You cannot buy them as part of this deal because they're trying to make sure that we don't get all the good shit. But they want to make sure the underwriter makes a bona fide offering to the public. Now, what that means is that mutual funds and hedge funds buy it. But the point is they want to make an absolute sale to the public. So people who work for a broker-dealer cannot buy on the shares. Now, if they work for a limited broker-dealer that only sells variable annuities and DPPs, they don't care because I guess their ideas are not connected enough. But other than that, you cannot buy on it. Now, let's talk about and that's called a restricted person. And if you're going to sell shares, you need to ask the person, are you restricted? Do you work for a broker-dealer? If you are managing account for someone, if you work for a broker-dealer and you're managing the account for someone, then you can buy for them, just not for yourself. If you are part of an investment club, which is a group of people investing, that club cannot buy on it unless you're 10% or less, restricted people are 10% or less, or they carve you out of the deal. Like that's the way it goes. So if it's an investment club and you or your family, your immediate family, meaning spouse, children, parents, siblings, in-laws, anyone who's supported by you cannot buy on these deals. Okay. So if you have a sister that lives in another country and you're fully independent, nobody cares. Now, again, if you or your family is part of an investment club, that investment club cannot buy in the IPO unless they carve you out of it where you don't get any of it, or your ownership is 10% or less. There are exceptions. Okay. So now, if you are there is an exception called issuer directed securities, where if the issuer, say your spouse or your whatever partner works for the company that is issuing shares, then you guys are allowed to get them because there's such a small amount of people that happens to that you're not abusing it. So they get what we call issuer directed shares, where the issuer says, okay, Mary or John is getting these amount of shares, you can get them. I hope that helps a little bit. That should be public offerings and underwriting. I'll see what else I can do next. If you have questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to do add-on videos to do it. Again, What did I say? This is a supplement to reading. You still need to read the goddamn motherfucking book. You need to read the book at all costs. You cannot pass this test by just listening to my ass or any videos. You need to read the book and do questions. And again, I do think STC is the best for the 24 right now. As of right now, in November of 2024, STC is by far the best for the 24. Their questions are pretty good. The way they do it, it's very simple. It's straightforward, not overcomplicated. Yes, if you have Kaplan and Ottman, you're going to be fine. I just think STC is better, but it's like here and then here, okay? I found the 57 and the 24 STC does a good job. You can absolutely pass with Kaplan and Ottman. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that I think STC is slightly better. Okay? Guys, everyone be good. Don't forget to check me out every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. on YouTube with my live Q&A, the fun shit show that we do. And please like, subscribe, share, and let's have some fun. Go pass this.